So I failed my first 24 months as a forex trader. Here's what I learned. So the first point of this video, I think I've mentioned it once or twice before. However, it's important that I reiterate this point because it does hold a lot of significance as well. So that would be, do not force consistency. Now hear me out when I say this. Now consistency, unlike a lot of other goals, if you look at the average goal that, let's say, a lot of people have, oh no, let me try and think of something now. Let's say, probably not an average goal, but let's say you want to run 100 meters in 12 seconds, right? Now with that goal, it's very specific and it's very measurable. So you can set a time and date on that and work towards that day by day, week on week, until you eventually achieve that goal, right? Now with consistency, it's a lot harder to measure because number one, you have to define consistency to you. So consistency is not like a specific number. It's not like a specific target. It's going to be different for every single person, every single trader that comes into the markets. I've spoken to one person, they could say, yeah, you know, on average 5% or above is consistent. You speak to another person, it's like, yeah, 10% or above is consistent. Another person may say, okay, as long as I'm above break even consistently and I'm in profit, then I'm consistent. So it completely depends, and it completely depends on how you define it. So you have to define that for yourself. And number two is that it's very hard to define a specific time and date for that setup. Did I really just say setup, bro? Wow, mind on the charts, bro. It's very hard to put a specific time and date on that goal actually becoming achieved or being reached, because it's very, very subjective to the individual as well. So I used to, for a lot of you will know, but I used to work a 9 to 5. So I used to work in an office with two other people in the finance department, and when I used to walk in the door. On the left hand side there used to be a big whiteboard, not a whiteboard, a big calendar, sorry. And for months on months I used to look up that calendar and put we used to have little stars, so no one would really know what my star would mean, but I'd put stars in different dates and I'd be like, yep, I want to become consistent by this date, I want to leave my 9 to 5 by this date, you know, I want to be free of the workforce by this date. And the problem with that is that it can be very, very subjective and very hard to accomplish because there's so many different variables to that goal. But however, I'm not saying, you know, sit back and just chill for 3 years and wait for it to happen. That's not what I'm saying here. You need to be actively putting in steps and working hard behind the scenes to put things in place to achieve that goal. So what I'm saying is that although the target of becoming consistent is very subjective itself, what you can do is focus on the steps that you can take, those small little steps that you can do day in, day out, week on week, month on month, to get to that goal as a side effect of that. For example, I don't know, just off the top of my head, could be, okay, well, if I want to become consistent and I'm returning solid returns every month or every quarter, what can I put in on the back end process to make that efficient, more like a business? You know, can I get my accountant set up? Do I need anything in place for that? Do I have to set up a limited company? What taxes do I have to put in place? You know, even in terms of the style, what data do I need to record? There's so many different things that you can put in behind the scenes. There's a million different things that you can work on behind the scenes to get to that goal. But as long as you're focused on those little things, you're going to eventually get to that goal. So it's only a matter of time. But to focus on, I want to become consistent by this date, it doesn't necessarily happen like that, in my opinion, in my experience so far. So number two, so this is very, very important. I've never mentioned this before, and this is actually something I've been playing over the past, recently, 2 months, I'd say 2-3 months max. And this is to focus on your chief aim versus the end goal. Now don't get me wrong, it's so important to focus on the end goal too. So for example, if you want to, I don't know, trade 8 figures in the future, have that goal in mind. But I think where a lot of people go wrong, including myself in the past, is that ultimately what you do is you focus so hard on that goal, but because it's so far away in the future, it could be, you know, 3 years down the line, and then it almost puts you off, it almost demotivates you because you have so many different things. You could be here, right, that end goal, but there could be a million different things between that fence of where you are and where you want to be. So I think that puts a lot of people off, and I think that's what ultimately equals to a lot of people quitting the game, you know, trying a different thing, and then they get caught up with that same cycle again. Whereas what I've really found helped in the past, especially recently, is have that end goal in mind, but focus on your chief aim. So what does that mean? Well, in between that bigger, longer term goal, you're going to have little targets to hit along the way, right? So if you're focused on your next target, for example, if you're trading, I don't know, if you're consistent and you're trading 5 figures, then you can have a goal to trade 6 figures. At least it's about finding that sweet spot in your mind of being unrealistic and being realistic. As long as you can find that sweet spot of this makes sense, this could happen, this could be 3 months away, and you can make that emotional connection, I think that's where really things start to happen. That's what I personally found recently, is if you can make that emotional connection that this could be very, very close away and it's not too far off your radar screen, then you can speed up that process a lot. So I found that definitely helps. So the reason I'm saying that is because I feel a lot of people get 3 months in, 6 months in, 9 months in, and then be like, yeah, this is too hard. You know, it's going to take me forever to achieve this goal, this goal, this goal. Yes, but at the same time, you've got goals in between that. So focus on that next goal in hand. Go after that, achieve that. That builds momentum. It builds a lot of momentum, a lot of confidence, and then you go after the next one, and the next one, and the next one, until you eventually get to that end goal. So that's the thing. And ultimately, you're probably not going to have an end goal anyway. Like, you're always going to be striving. You're always going to be going further and further and further. Like for me, I have an end goal in mind, but at the same time, when I reach that, there'll be more. There's always going to be more. So I think that's important as well. So the third point I want to mention here is super important as well, and this is to study and emulate the greats. So you have to focus on, okay, well, who is the greats within the industry? Unfortunately, you probably won't hear about a lot of them because they keep behind the scenes. They keep themselves very, very quiet for obvious reasons. So it's a smart move. You've got to respect them for that. But ultimately, they have a lot of things in common. I know, I won't say they're greats, but they're very, very good, successful traders who trade a lot of cattle too. But they keep very, very quiet about it. They don't tell anyone. They have a small circle of inner traders, and they just do their own thing and just live the life. And you wouldn't know they traded large cattle until they actually told you about it. So that's the thing with a lot of people. They have a lot of knowledge, but you wouldn't know unless you actually talk to them about it. What I'm trying to say is that they're not showing off. They're super humble. A lot of them will be anyway. And yeah, what I tend to notice about these people is that they have a foundation, right? So whether that's self-developed or learned from other people in the past, they have a strong foundation. But ultimately, there seems to be a common theme that I've noticed where, you know, you see it in Trading the Zone, you see it in Elliott Wave Theory, Wave the Turtle, Trading for a Living. You see it in a lot of different books. And what tends to happen is that once you've got that solid foundation, then you can start to build things and look outside of that little box that you're currently in to see, okay, well, is there any way I can actually optimize the style, the strategy that I'm trading? Can I put my own spin on things? Can I do this? Can I do that? All these kind of questions that seem to crop up after you kind of separate yourself from that box. So what I'm trying to say is that a lot of things within this industry right now, you're either going to go through a course, a community. That tends to be the most frequent ways of learning how to trade, which is a smart move because you're learning off people who have experience, who are where you want to be a lot of the times as well. So you're getting that direct or indirect experience through material. So that's a great step. But once you've got a good strong foundation, and it's not built on quicksand, and it's built on, you know, a good foundation, that's where you can kind of go off and do your own thing and kind of figure out, okay, well, is there any way I can actually optimize this? Do I want to put my own spin on things? What I tend to find is that with a lot of strategies, with a lot of styles, it's a strategy for a reason, right? So it's backed up by data, but you have to realize strategies are only opinions at the same time. They're opinions of someone's perception of the market that is backed up by data. So to say that it's, you know, completely solid or that's the only way to trade is not necessarily the case, because there's a million different ways to trade. I've seen people's charts before. Looks like a bomb's just hit it, but it works for them. And I've seen people who have nothing on the charts and that completely works for them. So it's like, figure out what works best for you and then go with that. But if you're so focused on, okay, well, no, this is the best way to trade, not necessarily. There's so many different ways to trade out there, and I'm speaking of this with a lot of passion because I was that person. I was like, this strategy is the best strategy in the world. Like, nothing's going to beat it, nothing's going to top it. But then you start to open up your mind. It's like, well, there's different ways to optimize it. There's so many different traders out there making money in different ways. Is there any additional things that I can either add in or take away? So that's the thing that I'm trying to get to here, is that a strategy is only opinion. Now, within that opinion, if it's backed up by data and you can test that for yourself, then that's a strong foundation. You can build that foundation, you can build off of that foundation, which is a key point. But at the same time, what I tend to notice with a lot of successful traders, there seems to be a commonality, and I know traders behind the scenes as well who trade a lot larger capital, and they tend to build a foundation, because if you just adopt someone else's strategy, that's their strategy, and although you can trade that, that's the way they perceive the markets, that's their perception of the market. So, you know, I've seen it in the past where it's like, oh, you know, such and such took this trade, why did he take this trade, why did she trade this trade? And it's like, that's the way they trade. You can't look at that person and be like, they shouldn't have taken that trade. That's their style, that's their strategy. Focus on your own thing, and although you can learn off those people, ultimately in the future you should have it in the gut. In my opinion anyway, this is my 2 cents, is that you should be able to have the confidence to back yourself and be like, yeah, okay, I've got this strong foundation now, I can put my own spin on things, I can make this more efficient, I can put my own thing on it, because then that's not only it's not like an ego thing of like, this is my strategy, but it's like, this is how I perceive the markets, this is all my experience in the past, this is bundled into one thing, and I see this for what it is, and that becomes hard to teach in my opinion. So I think that that's a key thing, to study the greats within the industry and really pay attention to, okay, well, how did they develop, how did they learn, and then what are they doing now? What was their entire journey look like? What did they do in the past? You know, what strategies did they try? Did they change style? Did they do this? Did they figure out this? So many different questions within that. So yeah, I think that's a bit of a tangent, it's a bit all over the place, but I was kind of just rolling on the ball with that, so hopefully you get what I'm saying. But yeah, that's a key topic. The last point I want to touch on here is not to let anyone affect your journey or your psychology about your journey. The reason being is that it's so easy for your parents, your friends, people on social media, people that you've heard of, people to make you think a certain way about your journey, or, you know, timelines associated with that. Just do your thing, man. Just do your thing, however long it takes, as long as you're putting in that work in the background, and you can look yourself in the mirror and be like, yeah, I put in the work. Then as long as you're doing that, you're on the right path. You are on the right path, trust me. So in this video, we've touched on a few different things that I've never really covered before, or I may have covered once or twice. But ultimately, the reason I wanted to touch on these points is because it tends to be different things than what I've touched on in the past. You know, you can go back to previous videos of mine and be like, you can see things like risk management in place, you know, having a strategy, joining a community, all these kind of things that are important as well. But these are things that are more psychology based, but can really help people out as well. So hopefully you've enjoyed that. Hopefully you've enjoyed this little different style of video. I'm gonna catch you later. Have a good weekend, and I'll speak to you all soon. With